Alright, so here we are. We're almost upon the first episode of the back 8 of Season 3 of The Walking Dead, and I figured, well, hey, this would be a perfect opportunity for... So the TV interpretation of The Walking Dead is proving interesting in that they are winding up in basically the same places, just via different paths. They don't always do a good job telling the story or developing the characters in the TV show as they do in the comic, and actually a couple of the characters they mangled beyond recognition. But Season 3 is doing things a lot better, and here we are. The prison is obliterated. Lots of people are dead, and the survivors are scattered. I'm going to be doing some compare and contrast with some of the dead main characters in the story. How they lived, how they died, differently or the same. We're going to be using for reference the Volume 1 Compendium, because the end of this corresponds with the Season 3 mid-season climax. Speaking of these volumes, these are, wow, look at these things. They're huge, they're kind of heavy and unwieldy, but you know what? Who cares? They're awesome and they're worth every penny. So I'm not going to get spoily about things that are coming up in later parts of the comics. I am going to be getting spoily about what's already been seen on TV and what is in the Volume 1 Compendium. And oddly enough, there's stuff that's happened in the TV show that doesn't happen in the comic until after the prison arc, like the return of Morgan, In case you've only seen the TV show, you've never read any of the comics, just know the characters of Merle and Durrell, T-Dog, Beth, any kid other than Carl and Sophia, those are all created strictly for the TV show. They weren't in the comic, and I'm not even going to be discussing them. All of Herschel's kids except for Maggie. Now, to qualify that, in the comic, Herschel was quite the breeder. He's got something like 7 sons and daughters. Well, 8 if you count the one who's already a zombie and in the barn. By the way, you run into him in the Walking Dead video game first season. Carol. Carol's character is changed from the comic. Although I wasn't really bothered with these changes. They did interesting things with the character in the comic and the TV. They just did different interesting things. In the comic, she was an examination of trying to deal with tragedy by clinging on to anything available, not being able to deal with any of it your own self. Her husband committed suicide rather than face the zombie apocalypse, leaving Carol to raise their own daughter and protect their own daughter in the face of all this craziness, and she wasn't prepared for it. She couldn't handle it alone. In contrasting the TV show, she starts out weak. She's clinging to the abuse of a husband. She's completely unable to function without him. But after he dies, after Sophia goes missing for most of Season 2 and then winds up she's a zombie, Carol discovers the inner strength that she never knew she had, and she goes on to become a capable and valuable member of Rick's group. Until that whole killing and burning thing happened. So in the comic, after everyone leaves the Atlanta campsite and Tyreese joins the group, she hooks up with him almost immediately. This continues throughout the Herschel's farm arc. It continues into the prison arc. And then Michonne is introduced. Michonne and Tyreese hit it off. Now it starts off as just a friendship, it's casual, but Carol's immediately jealous. And for good reason. Because Michonne does go after Tyreese. Carol soon witnesses Tyreese getting some service from Michonne on her knees. So Carol breaks up with Tyreese, and it becomes immediately evident just how much of her mental stability was reliant on that relationship. She attempts to commit suicide. She talks with Lori and Rick about, oh hey, I love both of you so much, can we please enter into polygamous marriage? Then she has a one-night stand with Herschel's son Billy, who isn't even in the TV show, and then she lets herself get eaten by a walker. Tyreese comic and TV characters have quite a bit of differences, but this is another one of those instances where it's interesting in both medium. In the comic, Tyreese is introduced way sooner. He is a strong, capable, and becomes a valuable member of the group. He forms a pretty fast friendship with Rick. On TV, he's got a sister. In the comic, he's got a daughter with a tag-along boyfriend. Those two. Okay. So Tyreese's daughter, tag-along boyfriend, they attempt the proverbial double suicide, okay? But tag-along boyfriend screws it up. He pops off too soon, kills Tyreese's daughter, but not in the head. So she comes back as a zombie, Tyreese has got to put her down, and then he sets about beating tag-along boyfriend to death. So lots of bad stuff goes down in the prison. More than on the TV show. I mean, we've got kids getting killed. We've got people killing people. We've got zombies killing people. There wasn't that virus epidemic that was in the TV show. That never happened in the comic. The tensions do get rather high, especially between Rick and Tyreese, and between Rick and Dale. It really adversely affects Tyreese and Rick's friendship. So much so that at one point they beat the crap out of each other, and Rick even winds up falling. He falls down a flight of stairs or falls off a balcony. I don't remember exactly which. Like I said, Tyreese and Michonne had hooked up. Mainly because Michonne doesn't mind playing the skin flute, and Carol didn't want to. Well, Carol did try it, but she was disgusted by it. Tyreese does feel bad about ditching Carol, but not so bad that it stops him from dipping into Michonne's cookie jar. Later, Tyreese and Michonne are captured by the governor. He brings Tyreese in front of the prison, says, alright, either all you people get out, or we're gonna kill this dude. Tyreese says, no, Rick, don't do it. So, governor cuts off his head. It takes him 4 or 5 times. Sophia! We, of course, don't really get to know her that well in the TV show. But in the comic, she represents the denial of the seriousness of the situation, as well as the misguided assumption that it's all going to get better at some point. She loses her dad, then she sees her mom try to commit suicide, then her mom does commit suicide. This draws her further and further away from reality. A pretty realistic representation, really, of what would happen with a kid, you know, say 7, 8, 9 years old. The denial hits a downright pathological point after her mom dies. She imprints on herself that Glenn and Maggie are her real mom and dad. Sophia, along with some others, which I'll talk about in a little bit, Sophia isn't even in the prison when the governor attacks, so she definitely lives through the end of the prison arc. Dale and Andrea, they really screwed up in the TV show. He has similarities in that his wife is dead. He picked up Andrea and Amy in his RV. But on the TV show, he turns into this unlikable adjutant. In the comic, that's not who Dale is. In the comic, he's often a voice of reason, a sounding board, and sometimes conscience for Rick. And so once again, a lot of crap goes down in the prison. Everyone is kind of angry with Rick. They're kind of questioning whether he should be the leader anymore. Dale's one of the people who puts together and is on the council so that Rick isn't the one making all the decisions anymore. But eventually, Dale says, hey, this place is too dangerous. I've lost faith in Rick's ability as a leader. And he packs up Andrea, Glenn, Maggie, Sophia in the RV, and they all split the prison before the governor attacks. Andrea, oh man, they just did some really weird things to that character. I mean, just about the only thing that comic book Andrea and TV show Andrea have in common is that they're both named Andrea. Oh, and they both had to kill their zombified sister Amy. There was none of this relationship stuff with Shane. There was none of this relationship stuff with the governor. She did not become confused with the gray area, join the Woodbury group, and say, hey, maybe we can all be friends. No. Now, okay, I will admit that some of the things they did with Andrea's character in the TV show was mildly interesting, and it served the narrative of what they were doing with the story arc. But Andrea in the comic actually fell in love with Dale. Andrea and Dale are a couple. They're a good couple. They both sincerely love each other, although Dale, there are times where he doubts that a young woman like herself could actually honestly be in love with an older guy like him. But no, her love is absolutely sincere, and it's in character, and it works, and it's just the strangest, oddest omission, a tragic omission from the TV show. The only thing I can figure out why they did it is because they figured people would think it was icky. I guess it's okay if you're an older man to have a younger girlfriend if you're rich, but if you're a normal guy like Dale or me, and if you have a younger girlfriend, then that's just icky to TV show viewers. The point is, their relationship was one of the truest in the comic, as a man and woman next to Glenn and Maggie's, and then Carl and Rick's as father and son. But I digress. In the comic, Andrea has a knack for sharpshooting. She is an awesome shot, she's an awesome sniper, and she's responsible for a lot of great saves. Not the least of which is coming back to the prison to help people escape when the governor is attacking the place. Shane was more quickly antagonistic in the comic than in the TV show. He gets immediately jealous and paranoid as soon as Rick shows up. Not just because he and Lori had made the Beast with two backs and he wanted to continue doing it more, but because Rick was the more confident leader. People picked up on that immediately, started looking to Rick where they had been looking to Shane. And also because Shane had this vain hope in his head that any day the government was going to show up and make everything better, and Rick is like, no dude, this is it. This is real, this is life from now on, it's not going to get better. And so Shane immediately sees Rick as a threat, not just to his sex life, but to his role as a leader, and he probably even got kind of alpha male threatened nonsense going on as well. He was a bit more two-dimensional, and TV Shane had more gray to him, and certainly had more for the lovers and haters to argue with themselves about. There was also no gray area in the comic with the death scene. Shane specifically lured Rick out into the woods with the motivation of killing him. Carl followed them out into the woods, saw what was going on, and BAM! Through the neck. Kills Shane dead. Herschel overall was a nicer guy in the TV show than in the comic. He does run the spectrum of behavior throughout his character arc. He starts off as friendly but guarded as he lets the group stay on his farm. He gets along well enough with everyone until his bigotry and his misogyny erupt. And we find out he's got a bunch of zombies in the barn that he thinks the government or someone will be able to find a cure for. After losing one of his several kids to one of the zombies in the barn, he accepts the finality of the situation, and he shoots all the zombies himself. He then kicks everyone off of the farm. Herschel and his brood stay. Rick and the group leaves, except they take Maggie with them because Glenn and Maggie are, you know. But a little bit later, once the prison story arc begins, Rick asks Herschel and his family, hey, come live on the prison with us. It's a lot safer than on your farm. And that is true at first. And that's when Herschel starts to lighten up a bit. He starts a fantastic garden. And once he sees how honestly and sincerely Maggie and Glenn love each other, he accepts the relationship. He becomes fond of Glenn. In fact, he even officiates their wedding. So, but the good times at the prison, they don't last that long. Like I said, a lot of bad stuff happens, including the death of all the remaining members of Herschel's family, except for Maggie and Billy. Billy, who wasn't even in the TV show. When the governor attacks the prison, Billy is shot, blammo, right in front of Herschel. Herschel finally just loses the will to live. He's on his knees. He says, please, God, just kill me. So the governor does, bam, shoots him through the head. Now, this is interesting because on the TV show, since they had killed off Dale already, and since they had introduced Tyreese a little late, and he spent so much time actually with the Woodbury group, some of the character arc stuff from Dale and Tyreese was folded into TV Herschel. For example, TV Herschel is bitten in the leg and they have to amputate it. He is the one who becomes a conscience and moral compass for Rick. And ultimately it's him, not Tyreese, who winds up being beheaded by the governor with Michonne's katana. You know, actually, the characters of Laurie in the comic and the TV show, they're not all that different. I don't really remember that many significant changes, not enough to piss me off anyway. Now, I could be wrong, I could just be forgetting. But the biggest difference is she dies sooner in the TV show than in the comic. You remember in the TV show, she dies giving birth to Judith, and then later on she's gobbled up by a zombie. In the comic, she lives all the way to the end of the prison arc. You know, the governor has completely routed the prison's defenses. Rick's group is trying to get away. Laurie's got Judith in her arms, is running, and the governor orders, shoot that person. So, blammo! Laurie is killed instantly. Judith lives just long enough to be crushed by her mother's body. There were some broad differences between comic governor and TV governor, and I think a lot of people didn't like those differences, but maybe I'm the only one amongst the people who like both the comic and the TV show. Maybe I'm the only one who thinks the comic book character works well in the comics. The TV show character works well in the TV show, but if you swap that around, the character really wouldn't work in the different medium. In a comic, he's almost immediately identified as a bad guy. There's no real gray area, even though in his mind he thinks there is a bit. He captures Rick, Michonne, and Glenn with the initial intent of turning them into food for the zombies in the arena. And even though he's not always that smart, he is crafty enough to recognize that there's something valuable to these three. There's something they're not telling him. He works psychological torture on Glenn. He works physical torture on Rick. And Michonne, oh, jeez. He goes completely nutballs on Michonne. Chains her up in a garage. Beats and rapes her repeatedly. You know, they aren't pretty moments. But if you're the type of person who likes seeing revenge torture, sadly though, she doesn't have time to finish him off, and he lives and he gets his revenge on the prison. And you know Lily in the show? In the comic, she's a different character essentially. She's a Woodbury citizen, and she is the one that the governor ordered to kill Laurie. When Lily finds out that the person she killed was a woman holding a baby and that she killed this woman and her child, she's furious with the governor and eventually blows his brains and eyeballs right out of his head. Like I said, Judith was crushed to death by her mother's body. In the TV show, is she really dead? I'm not 100% certain. I mean, there's a lot of evidence there, but God, I'm just not 100% certain that they're going to kill a baby. But who knows? So there we have it. That's all I got this time around. Thank you very much for watching, and remember, don't ever get attached to any character in The Walking Dead.